All right, we'd like to call to order our Riverdale City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Please let the record show that all council members are present, as well as members of the city staff and members of the public. We'll start off with our Pledge of Allegiance tonight, which will be led by Mr. Cody Carden.
Everybody, please rise and make the appropriate sign and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Carden. Our invocation will be by Councilor Merrill.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be gathered here together tonight, and we pray that Thou would please bless all of us here, and especially those representing the city, that we could be blessed in our capacities and that they may be enlightened to make the best decisions for everyone here in Riverdale City. We especially pray, Father, that Thou would please protect the residents and please protect those that serve this city and that risk their lives to do so. We ask a blessing over them and over their families. We're grateful for this city. We're grateful for this nation. And we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Merrill. Just to clarify, tonight we're having two meetings. We'll have a regular city council meeting, and then later we'll have an RDA meeting. We're now going to open up the microphone for some public comment. This is an opportunity to address the city council regarding your concerns or ideas. No action will be taken during the public comment portion. As you approach the microphone, please state your name and the city of residence and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and reports. Our first presentation will be by Ricky Hatch and Lauren Schaefer from Weber County Elections. Mr. Hatch, make sure it looks like it's turned on. If the button should be up.
There we go. How about that? Yeah, okay, that works. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and the council. It's nice to see everybody. My name is Ricky Hatch, and I'm the County Clerk Auditor for Weber County. Lauren did not make it tonight. She is actually still working. She says, I've got a ton to do. Is it okay if I stay? And I totally am fine with that. And we're happy we're really pleased to contract with Riverdale City again to conduct your elections. All cities in Weber County are conducting their elections through Weber County Elections. We realize you have a choice. We don't make any additional money off of serving the cities. We simply recoup our costs. But we feel it's important to make sure that your citizens and that you are taken care of from an election standpoint. And that's part of the presentation tonight, is to go through some of the safeguards that we have in place and allow you time to ask any questions that you have, and happy to have a good discussion. So I'll go through this presentation, and please feel free at any time if you have questions, just interrupt me or raise your hand or whatever you need. Lauren has been our elections director for about a little over a year now. She comes with an excellent background. She worked not only in the state elections office a few years back, she's also worked for a city. She worked for Salt Lake City in their recorder's office. It may be where she met Michelle, I'm not sure, but so she's aware of the functionings of the city and the unique demands placed on you as a city. She also has her master's degree in Homeland Security, so she has a good cybersecurity background. All of that experience and education made her an excellent candidate for our elections director, and she's doing a great job. So tonight we're going to talk about some pillars of elections integrity and security. Let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about each of these in a fair amount of detail. Go ahead and move ahead. And the first three of these pillars of election integrity are fully audited. And we'll talk about in depth. You're going to see audited throughout the presentation tonight, because that's a key component of election administration. The first pillar talks about the voter registration database, the integrity of the data. And Utah has a unique and beneficial separation of powers or segregation of duties when it comes to the voter registration database. So the database is housed and maintained by the state elections office under the office of the lieutenant governor. They house the hardware, the programming, but they don't touch any of the data. That is left to the clerks. So they take care of the security controls around access and the backups and everything like that. And the clerks are the ones that actually enter and alter the data that's inside the voter registration database. And that separation of duties is on purpose to help ensure controls. And you'll see this throughout. The other thing that the Lieutenant Governor's office does is they audit this database. They audit every county every year. And that's required by state law. We don't know who they're auditing or when or anything like that. And so they go in and they do a random sample of of voters within each county. And they verify that the appropriate documentation exists and that it matches the information that's entered into that system. So this is fully audited. Next slide. For voter verification, it's important to know that in Utah, no voter will ever receive a ballot until we have verified their identity through their driver's license number, state ID number, or through their social security, last four of their social with a combination of name and date of birth. If we cannot verify that, they do not receive a ballot ever. We do that on purpose. We'll send them a letter, say something's wrong with your registration, we need some additional information, and we work with them for that. So that's important to know. You hear the terms universal vote by mail, or you're just mailing it out to everybody, and that is not true. We mail them out only to voters who have been verified through our systems. We also maintain the signatures. Up to five signatures per voter is stored in our voter registration database, and that's a key control that we will talk about a little bit later on. Next slide. Maintenance of the voter list is crucial, especially in a state where you mail ballots to every active registered voter. And so we have a whole host of things that we do to help ensure that the database for voters is current. And it's a challenge, and it's something that we've really worked hard on over the years, and I'll talk about the success that we've had. But let me tell you a little bit about some of the checks that we do. First off, we check for duplicate voters. Now in Utah, each voter is assigned a single voter ID, and that number stays with them throughout their entire life, regardless of what county they live in. When they move, that number ports with them. That helps us eliminate duplicates across county lines. But we also do this on a state level. We belong to a consortium of states owned and operated by the states that does the same thing that we do here in Utah as far as checking for duplicate voter registrations. We provide them with voter information. They compare that with voter information from 28 other states, and they email us back or send us back a list saying, these look like potential duplicates. You might want to check further. They have no access to our voter database and no ability to update it. Then the state obtains that list, and they provide the appropriate list to each county clerk, and then we do the research, and if necessary, we will adjust and alter that voter's record. That's one way that we check for duplicate voter registrations. We also do a check for deceased voters. This is done at least on a weekly basis. We get notified by the State Department of Vital Statistics. We go in and check obituaries of the papers. We're noticed from the Social Security Administration of deaths, and we also go on to the mortuary websites within the county and just check for folks that may not have an obituary. And that is done at a minimum weekly, but it's generally done daily that we go in and check those, because we feel that's an important way to verify and to clean off the deceased voters from the list. We receive automatic updates from the driver's license division. So anytime you go into the driver's license division and you change your address or you obtain a license, unless you opt out specifically as a voter, that information ports over into our system. And so that's a great way that we can get updated current information, especially for people who have moved or people who are newly registering to vote. And that is ongoing. We receive those updates every day. We also we participate with the U.S. Postal Service in their National Change of Address service. This is a service where we take our voter list and we bump it up against their change of address list. So when someone moves and they tell a postal service, I'm no longer at this address, I'm over here, we bump our voter registration list up against that system. And when information comes back indicating that a voter's moved, we then mark them as inactive, so they will no longer receive a ballot. We send them a letter saying, hey, our information shows that you've moved. We just want to confirm. Please let us know. And if they don't let us know, nothing happens. They remain as inactive. If they let us know, then we take the necessary measures to ensure that their ballot gets to the right place. We do that 2 to 3 times a year. We've been doing that for years and years. Now it's state law that we have to do it 90 days before each election. So no difference for us other than it's now mandated by state law. And then lastly, we vote by mail. When we mail out ballots to voters, some of those ballots are going to come back as undeliverable. And when that's the case, we take those, we take a look, and we go through the same process as we would if it's a national change of address or update from the driver's license division. We inactivate them and we send them a letter. And we do this with each election every year. And so it's a great way to help keep our rolls current. When we did our very first election, vote by mail election in 2013, we mailed out all the ballots, and about 20% of them came back as undeliverable. Our voter rolls were pretty inaccurate. Last November, when we mailed them out, 1.5% came back as undeliverable. And when you consider that about 1% of the population moves every month, that's a really good low rate. We wish it were 0, but it's just with our mobile population, that just isn't going to happen. But we do keep these efforts. We're really diligent in maintaining these records. State law now requires that I certify every month that we have completed all of these tasks and a couple of additional ones. And they're the same tasks that we've been doing for years, but now we have, by state law, a requirement that those are certified. So we're happy to do so. Next slide. Also, just keep in mind, all of this is audited by the Lieutenant Governor's office. Now I want to talk about security over the ballot envelopes themselves. Let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about the control things around the processes as well as some characteristics on the envelopes. First off, it's important to know that as we are verifying, when you mail back a ballot and we verify that you're an active registered voter, that you're able to vote in this particular election, that you haven't already tried to vote, we do that while the envelope is still sealed. So we don't want any way for us to be able to predict or know how you have voted as a voter and to have that influence in any way how we process your ballot. There's no personal or party information on the outside of the ballot. It comes back, we remove the privacy tab, which has your name, address on there. The only identifying information left on that ballot is a unique control number that we'll talk about in just a minute. It shows what precinct you're in, and then your signature. And a lot of people's signatures, some of them are legible, but not all. And so we do that on purpose. There's no indication of party on the outside of your ballots. So we keep those envelopes sealed to make sure that our verification is independent of how that voter may or may not have voted. Next slide. On every ballot envelope, you'll see a number. Now, the number in the lower left-hand corner of that is your precinct. The number to the right it's a unique control number that is unique not just to that voter and not just to that election, but to that specific envelope. That number is automatically generated by the voter registration database system. We have no way to create that ourselves, and it is not known to the public. It is never given out to the public, and it changes as each election happens. And this control number is a unique control that allows us to help prevent double voting and other checks to make sure that that every envelope that comes to us that we're going to open is indeed legitimate, belongs to that election and to that voter. Next slide. But things happen. People lose their ballots. We had a story probably about 4 years ago in Riverdale. A woman returned a ballot, or a voter returned a ballot, 2 ballot envelopes just soaked in blood. There was blood all over them. And fortunately, we were able to see the voter information, and we sent out a call, a courtesy check for the police to see if something was wrong. Come to find out, She was doing her daily walk for exercise, and she thought she'd drop hers and her son's ballot off at the drop box. Tripped right before she got to the drop box, hit her head, was bleeding, called the 911. They came to get her, and she said, "I've got to vote my ballot first." Dropped him in the drop box and then went to the hospital. So it happens. Of course, we couldn't count those ballots. We couldn't open them or anything, so we contacted her and gave her a replacement ballot. But there are controls to make sure that in situations not like this, but perhaps a nefarious actor who says, they call us and say, "Hey, my dog ate my ballot," or "I lost it," or "I never received it," and they might do that 5 different times, and we will mail them 5 different ballots. We have controls to help prevent 4 of those ballots from being counted, and that's on the next slide we'll talk about. So before I can issue any replacement ballot to anybody, I have to inactivate that unique control number for that previous ballot. I don't have the ability to override that in the system. I must do that in order to create a new ballot for them. And so that new control number is generated, and it won't until I inactivate that. That means that you could request 100 replacement ballots, and we would never send 100 replacement ballots to anybody, but you could do that and try to return every single one in a different drop box throughout the county. You could put some by mail, and you could try to come and vote in person. Only one of those envelopes is going to get through, and it's the last one, because all of the rest of them are inactivated. And the very first thing, we would bring them into our office, we run them through our envelope sorter, and it would check and spit them out and say there's a problem here. And at that point, then you'd get a call from the FBI or from our county attorney, because we provide that information to them. Next slide. This is our envelope sorter. This is what we do when we bring envelopes in. The very first thing we do is run them through. We remove this privacy tab. We run them through. That envelope sorter scans the barcode, identifies it as either a valid or not valid unique control number, making sure that it belongs to that voter, to that election, and has not yet been used. And then it takes a picture of the voter's signature and stores that electronically. Next slide. Then we go through a signature verification process. The system actually performs the first level of verification. It looks at, I want to say, 135 different signature characteristics for a particular signature, and based off of the settings and parameters and the signatures that we have on file, it will either pass it or fail it. If it passes it, awesome. That envelope is now ready to be opened. We audit that process. And I think our red audit words are going to come up here in just a second. But this is audited during the process. We do it as the batches are being processed, because if the system is having some kind of failure, we want to know before we approve or reject a bunch of ballots. So that's done, and that's now required by state law. We've been doing that for a while. This system has gone through probably about 1 million different signatures, and only once have we found one where we found that we would have disagreed with the decision that the computer made, and that was in the first run. If the signature is assigned good status, then that's good. If it's challenged, then it goes through an additional level of review. That's done by trained elections workers, and that it brings up both signatures, the one that we have on file and the one that is on the back of the envelope, and they make a decision there. If they reject it, it goes to a third level of human eyes. And that is done by full-time county personnel who've had further training in signature comparison. And we have access up to 5 signatures that we can compare to, as well as additional documents that may have handwriting, and we do a lot of analysis there. Each of these reviewers, we track their statistics of their acceptance and rejection rate, and we know pretty much where the norms are, and if we see somebody falling outside of those, we pull them aside to see what's up and see if there's further training that's needed. So that process is fully audited, and audited in a public setting. Next slide. Now, if it fails the third level of review, if it fails all 3 levels of review, that's considered a challenged signature. And what we do is we then notify the voter. We leave their envelope sealed. We contact them and provide them with what's called a cure letter. They need to cure that process. We give them instructions on how they can do that. They have to provide some additional information and provide another signature, which we then check and verify. Now, we notify these voters by mail, email, text, phone number. We do whatever we can to contact these voters. If the voter provides that information and it comes back to us and it all checks out and the signature matches one of our signatures or the handwriting analysis that we perform, then we open that envelope and count the ballot. If it doesn't, then that ballot remains sealed in the envelope and we don't count it. On average, about just a little over 1% of all returned envelopes or ballots are challenged, and only about 50% of those have been returned in the past. That's a low number, and there are a couple reasons why. The first one is about half of voters end up turning in their ballot or voting either the day before or the day of Election Day. Now, it takes for us to go through these checks to verify their control number and the signature. That takes a few days for us to be able to do that, and especially when you have a rush of tens of thousands of ballots received on one day. And so generally, we're checking those signatures and verifying and sending cure letters 3, sometimes 4 days after the election. Now, generally, your average voter believes that the election is over on election night or the next morning because the news has called the races, right? They've decided who wins. But you all know that the 2 weeks after election, that's a long time for a candidate because you're waiting until the actual final certification of those election results. And that's part of the reason that gives us time to be able to send those cure letters out and give voters a chance to return them. But voters quite often say, my vote doesn't matter, there's no close race, or the election is over, so I'm not going to even return it. The other one is we think that some of these are people who have tried to fraudulently sign someone else's envelope. And so they're not going to return the cure letter because they were caught or identified. So, and we are constantly working to try and get that rate up, that approval rate. Next slide. Now let's talk about chain of custody over the processing of ballots. And this is an important thing because we want to make sure that once a ballot is received by us, that there is no way that a new ballot could be inserted into that process and no way that a legitimate valid ballot could be removed from that process without detection. So we have controls that do that. The first thing we do is we batch these groups of ballots into batches of 250. And each batch has a unique identifier. It's known within the system exactly which envelopes belong to which batch. And that batch has an audit card or a reconciliation sheet that follows that batch the rest of the process. Anytime workers touch those ballots and do anything, slice them open, pull the ballot out of the envelope, anything like that, they have to initial and timestamp that batch reconciliation card. So we know at any time which poll workers touched which ballots, when they did, and what they did with that. We always require the buddy system. Now it's state law. We've always had required if any ballot is going to be touched, there has to be 2 election workers present. And we perform reconciliations throughout the entire process. If there is any discrepancy in any step of those reconciliations, we stop that batch right there and we go and research until that batch is rectified, until that error is fixed. Last November, we processed over 80,000 ballots. There were a couple of times when at our reconciliation point, we were 1 ballot off and we literally stopped everything and went and researched that. That's how much we care about making sure that every legitimate ballot is counted. Next slide. This is our scanning equipment. This is by ES&S. They're based in Omaha, Nebraska. They're the largest election tabulation software and hardware company in the country. They've been in business for a very long time and do an excellent job. Let's talk about some of the controls. On the next slide, we'll see the security measures around this equipment. Before we can even use any equipment, it has to be certified by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. This is a bipartisan agency set up in 2002 after Bush v. Gore and the fun stuff of the hanging chads. What they said is no more paper. We don't want any more paper. We want computers and equipment. But, and they were wise to do this part, they said if we're going to use equipment, there's got to be standards, and it's got to meet those standards before anybody can use it. And so they set up this commission that provides and establishes the standards for this equipment. And in Utah, we cannot use any voting equipment that has not been certified by the Election Assistance Commission. That process takes between 6 and 18 months to get certified. And if they change one line of code, they have to recertify. So it's a really rigorous testing process. It's important to know that these scanners are not connected to anything except the power outlet. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no Bluetooth, there's no hardwire connection, there's no modem in this equipment, and we do verify that. All software updates to this must be done manually. We work with the vendor. It's pretty rare that they come in to do these, but when they do, it's logged, it's supervised. We know who it is coming in advance. They're technicians that we've worked with. We change the default passwords on these machines, and so we log in, and they have no ability to alter that because everything is supervised, as well as under 24-hour surveillance. We also seal each access point into these machines with pre-numbered tamper-proof seals that are logged, and we verify that those seals have not been broken anytime we go to use the equipment or anytime we're going to update it. One of my favorite things is something that we just started doing last year, and now it's state law. We got it into the state law this year. Is called a hash audit. And you can think of a hash value as kind of a digital fingerprint of a system, but the collection of the system's hardware, software, and firmware. It's this unique combination of those three that, if altered in any manner, that digital fingerprint changes. And so what we do is we conduct, at the beginning of every election and at the end of every election, we conduct this hash audit where we go in through the operating system and recalculate that hash. So that means if someone were to come in and let's say the vendor changed some of the code, maybe the tabulating code, or even if they changed the size of the font, that hash value would be different than our hash value that we calculate. If someone were to hack in and put some kind of remote access software or other program onto that server, that hash value would be different, and we would identify that and take steps to remediate. So that's one of my favorite things that we do. Next slide. And of course, this is all audited, and it's audited before and after each election in a publicly noticed meeting. We audit before we begin counting ballots, and we audit right at the end before we certify the election results. And these are all open to the public. Now, the last pillar that we'll talk about, and then I'll be out of your hair, is voter responsibility. To have a good, secure elections, it's not just our job, although we take that very seriously, but the voters are also responsible to make sure that they're protecting their ballots and that they're controlling those key crucial assets. There are many ways to do this. The first one is to make sure your address is current. There are two easy ways to do this. One is you can go to vote.utah.gov and you can look up your voter information. It'll tell you who your elected officials are, what your ballot looks like, where you're registered, your party affiliation, everything that you need to know. And you can change that all online if you want in just a matter of minutes. The second thing is if you move or your address changes in any way, you want to go through the driver's license division, dld.utah.gov, and you can, for free, go online and update your driver's license address. That ports over to us, and so we'll get that notification as well to make sure that your address is kept current. Sometimes things slip through the cracks, or there are errors, or people die and somehow we can't identify it, or they move and we haven't caught it. It doesn't happen super often, but it does happen. And you may receive a ballot at your house for someone that doesn't belong to you. If that's the case, just give our office a call, give us all the information, we'll give you instructions on what to do, and then we'll take that and make sure that voter is inactivated and research that process. And then lastly, you can track the status of your ballot. There are two ways to do this. The first one, it's not up there, but the first one is actually through the Postal Service. And it's a pretty cool service called Informed Delivery. It's a free service. You sign up for it, and what will happen is every morning you'll receive an email that says, here's what's coming in your mailbox today. And it doesn't just tell you what it is, it actually gives you an image of the front part of that letter or mailer or whatever it is that's coming. So you can actually see in the morning what's coming that day in the mail. That's a great way to know, hey, my ballots are arriving today, so I'm going to run home at lunch and grab them, or be a little bit more cautious about them. The second thing is what's up here. You can sign up Again, you can sign up at ballottracks.utah.gov, and this is where you provide some information and say, I want to know, I want to be notified either by phone, text, or email, or all three, when you mail my ballot. And you'll receive a phone call, text, or an email when we've mailed your ballot, so you know approximately when to expect it. You'll receive another notification when that ballot comes back into our office, and you'll receive a third notification when the envelope has been opened and you've been approved and we've taken your ballot for scanning. This is a great way to make sure that we've received your ballot and that it's being taken care of. These are good ways to track and be responsible for your own ballots as voters. Next slide. And of course, audits. Audit. That's our mantra. There are multiple audits that are done in every election. We do them in publicly noticed meetings, or if not during a publicly noticed meeting, in open view of election observers, and we welcome and love to have people come in and observe our processes. We audit our equipment before every election. We audit our equipment and processes during every election, and then afterward in the post-election audit, where we conduct an actual sample of the actual ballots that were tabulated and verify that the equipment is correctly converting them into what's called a cast vote record, and correctly aggregating the sums so that we can know that the results are secure but also accurate. So we audit, and that's really important to us. Next slide. And then lastly, if you need any information, our website has presentations like this, but in far more detail. So if you want to spend a couple of really fun hours listening to controls surrounding elections processing, that information is up on our website, along with a host of other information regarding your specific city elections as well as elections in general. And vote.utah.gov also has good information, including information about candidates. So it's helpful for voters to know where to go to get their information, and we're happy to provide it. With that, I am open to any questions you have, and would love to invite anybody to come take a tour of our office. We love having you come day, night, maybe not late night, but evenings. Have you come. You can come as a city council. You can come as a candidate, church group, family groups, scout groups. We'll take you all, and we invite you in, and we say, think like a crook. Come through our process and look for holes, because we want to identify them. If they exist, we want to identify them and plug them. And so we would welcome you to come. If you want to, just send us an email, call me, or email me or our team, and we're happy to accommodate. With that, I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Hatch? Thank you for a very thorough explanation and presentation tonight.
Bet.
He got my signature one time. My boss and my signature were very similar, and so I had changed so I got a cure letter. So,
Oh, good.
So it works. I mean,
Glad to hear it works. Sometimes spouses will swap their envelopes and accidentally sign the other envelopes, and we catch those too. But sometimes we catch both of them at the same time, and so we can fix it ourselves. We know that, but it's nice to see that it works.
it works.
Very good.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great job.
All right. Our next presentation will be on the 5600 South project, and that'll be from Nancy Cousins and Brandy McDonald.
Brandy had to step away for another obligation tonight. I'm Nancy Cousins, and thank you for letting us be here and take a few minutes of your time. Elmer Acevedo is with me also. We are part of the engagement team, public involvement, hired by UDOT specifically for this project. So this is a long-term project, and we are the faces that you're going to see on this project through 2026. So we wanted to make sure we came. We said hello. You may have questions about the project, that I likely won't know the answer to, but we are prepared to gather information. We brought project business cards for you that has all of our contact information. If you have specific questions about the project, please let us know, and we can get with members of our design and engineering team to get those questions answered and addressed and back to you quickly. So again, we are touching Riverdale City and Roy City. This is a pretty encompassing project, and we want to make sure that you have information about the process from beginning to end. Next slide. We, just a little bit about what we're doing. We are reconfiguring the 5600 interchange and making it easier to access Hill Air Force Base and maneuver through this area. We are also widening 5600 South all the way to 3500 West. So it's a really big endeavor. I actually live in South Jordan, and every day when I'm making the commute in here, I listen to the news and traffic, and 56 is always on the news that there is backing. So this is a much needed project, and we're excited to be part of it. We do have a contractor on board. It's a joint venture. This is a big enough project, and it's called a progressive design build. So we've had designers on board working through the processes of design for over a year now. And very soon you will start to see equipment mobilize and show up, and you'll start to see work starting to take place this summer within the next few weeks. Next slide. So this outlines some of the project benefits that have been identified. A few things that for Riverdale City, you are going to want to know. The Riverdale Road exit and the 5600 exit will be combined into one and shift to the south. So when we're all done, if you want to access Riverdale Road or 5600 South, you're going to exit at the same time. We have a collector distributor ramp that will be built along the side, and we just can't have that many exits in such close proximity. So we are shifting and forming a collector road. So you'll get off at the same place, and then you will have an opportunity. If you're going to Riverdale Road, you're going to keep going. And if you want to get 5600 South, you'll be able to exit right there too. So high level overview. In the orange is kind of our work zone area, what you're going to be seeing at different times for the next few years.
Is that similar to what they did by Sandy and the?
Yes, it is similar to what they did in Sandy, a collector distributor road to pull some traffic off of the main corridor and make those exits function better.
Okay.
So yes, great question. Next slide. So this is high-level overview of our phasing. Like I said, you will see equipment mobilizing within the next few weeks, but until fall this year, there will be no impacts at all to traffic. There's quite a bit of earthwork that we need to do that is off of the regular roadway. So you're going to see a lot of earthwork, a lot of equipment, a lot of workers. We've got utility, we've got drainage. There's a lot of work that needs to take place, but we don't necessarily need to impact drivers right at the beginning. So the impacts to drivers, you won't see really anything until fall. And when that comes into the window, we will be in advance of that. Mike already knows we have a few more maps that we need to create, a little bit more detail to help people know and understand how to navigate through the work zone. So all of that is coming and is in process to make sure we're in advance of letting people know what's happening and why. Next slide. So this shows you the area that this is called phase one. And like I said, the orange in here is where the crews are going to be working, but we won't necessarily be impacting traffic until fall of this year. So that's the areas that you're going to see work taking place, the areas in orange, but we won't be doing lane shifts or anything like that right in the very beginning. Okay, next slide. And that is really our general overview. Before I wrap, I wanted to let you know we did have a Meet the Contractor night a few weeks ago. We had approximately 150 people come ask questions about the project. We have a lot of interest, and I think once we break ground, we're going to have more interest. I think we've got almost 1,000 people in our stakeholder database now, and we send updates periodically about progress and updates. So a new one will come out this week saying that we're breaking ground and that the project team is mobilizing. So we encourage people to sign up for updates. On the business cards and up here, we also have a dedicated project website, and all of the materials that we share publicly can be found on the website. We do have a community coordination team. Mike is part of that team. So we want all of the communities to feel that they have a seat at the table and have access to information and are a good resource for us to share accurate information about what's happening on the corridor. And with that, very short, sweet, thank you for your time. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer what I can tonight.
Thank you for reaching out. As soon as that dirt starts to move, I know we're all going to start getting a lot of questions, so it's good for us to be kept in the loop. We'll definitely want to get those business cards and get signed up for any updates that you have. We'll take it. We'll just pass those around so that we can be knowledgeable. Thank you. Are you going to come back for another one?
Yes.
Of these type of things? Okay.
I think even every couple of months, every 3 months, just to keep you in the loop, if you are open to that,
I think
that's
that
what
would be helpful
we
to
would
us.
like to do.
Yeah.
And
'Cause it's-
if needed, we could bring an engineer with us to answer specific questions as needed too.
Okay. Yeah. We all have good intentions of keeping up on what's going on, but it's nice to have someone come and actually tell us so that we know. So
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Item number 3 is the mayor's report. I don't have anything in the interest of time for this meeting. We'll move on to item number 4, city administration report. Mr. Brooks.
I covered most of that in the pre-planning meeting, but there was one thing that I forgot that I think it's important that we cover. Randy Koger's retiring after 33 years of service to Riverdale City. His open house will be the 29th from 1 to 3 at the fire station. So if you get a chance to go out there and say goodbye to Randy, this will be it. So a lot of institutional knowledge we lose right there. But Randy's been good for the city, and we appreciate his service. So try to get there. Pardon me? 1 to 3 at the fire station.
Anything else?
That's all, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And we did the flood update earlier, so we won't have anything on that. We'll move on to agenda item F, consent items. Number 1, consideration to approve the meeting minutes from the June 6th, 2023 council work session and council regular meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Yeah, there was one correction that Councilor Hanson made via email, and we've got that correction made, Ms. Maragoni. Very good. Councilor Arnold.
Move to approve consent items with the corrections made or communicated to Michelle.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll move on to the action items. Number 1, consideration of final site plan proposal for Tesla Riverdale Automotive Center, located at approximately 4581 South, 1500 West, Riverdale, as requested by 6S Development, LLC, and AWA Engineering. Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. Jake Tate is present representing this evening for the group for Success Development. In the past, we've also had Sam Moore at the Planning Commission, but he's not with us this evening. This is on the parcel that is currently west along 1500, between I-15 and 1500, that's currently owned by the Redevelopment Agency. This request, it does require conditional use permit, and as a result came before the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit request the same night of the final site plan recommendation review on May 23rd. At the conclusion of both agenda items, the conditional use permit was approved, and a favorable recommendation was forwarded to the City Council for approval of the Tesla Automotive Center, as found in your packet. The general plan guidance for the area is planned commercial high, and the project does comply with that proposed use. You'll see the reports found in your packet. My report, I have no items of note. or concern. Under the Public Works concern or Public Works comments, Mr. Douglas has noted that he's spoken with Mr. Tate and feels confident that 2 comments found under his review are easily resolved, and he would have no problem with the council approving this with the stipulation that the items are resolved prior to recording the plat. The items being the drainage system operations and maintenance plan and BMPs approved and recorded with plat. And then that will need to include the BMPs and maintenance for the CDS manhole. And then number 2, hydraulic separator or BMPs to retreat stormwater before water enters city system on small basin. And I believe that those 2 have talked about that as well since the time of this report. You'll see the commentary from the fire and police that there's no concerns or items of note. And I also noted in the work session, I'll again note that we have an updated letter from Mr. Freeman regarding his now recommended approval of the improvement drawings found in the packet, with the understanding that the coordination of issue, recordation of required easements for Riverdale City as noted in AWA comments be resolved, and providing the size for the grease trap or grease interceptor per Tesla specific data. And then he's comfortable with the engineer's cost estimate that has been updated, showing a final total of $57,048, and then the 10% would be an additional $5,704.80. So those are the comments I have. The packet thereafter follows for both the application follows for both the conditional use permit and the site plan, and then you'll see the supporting documentation for the submittal this time. So with that, I'll turn it over unless you have any other questions or comments from you or Mr. Tate.
Mr. Tate, do you have any comments or anything you would like to share with us?
Jake Tate, 2010 North Redwood Road, Salt Lake City, Utah. No, just here to answer any questions you have, Mayor.
You're okay with all those things, those changes that were
we've talked with the
noted?
city, and we're good to go.
Council, any questions for Mr. Eggett, Mr. Tate, anybody else? Councilor Arnold.
Move to approve this final site plan as stated within the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank
Welcome.
you. We'll now move on to item number 2A, motion to untable and consideration of ordinance 964 regarding a proposed final subdivision and site plan request for Coleman View Estates PRUD subdivision located at approximately 5368 South, 1050 West in Riverdale, as requested by Goldcrest Homes. Mr. Eggett, we'll just start with, we have 2A, B, and C, but we'll just start with 2A.
That's what I was going to note. There are three dependent items that are all kind of linked together, being the subdivision being obviously in first posture. This was presented to the council back on May 16th, 2023. At the conclusion of the discussion in the matter, all 3 items were subsequently tabled. Since that time, the applicant has worked on a lot of resolutions of the items noted at that time. And you'll see in the packet that there's updated review comments from city staff and the city engineer. I didn't have any items of note or concern with my report review. Mr. Douglas he stated that he would be fine with it moving forward with the stipulation that all items are submitted and approved prior to recording the plat. His first comment is drainage system operation and maintenance plan BMP is approved and recorded with the plat. The plan needs to include a drawing with all relevant stormwater infrastructure, a sheet with scheduling intervals for maintenance with the plan to record inspections, and the hydrodynamic separator needs to be included in the plan along with BMPs for stormwater and landscape maintenance. And then under other, a letter with UDOT, or a letter from UDOT with permission any requirements for stormwater connections to UDOT system, a letter approving all of the proposed improvements and connection in UDOT's right of way. There's no concerns or comments noted from the fire or police department. The city engineer states that he is given the recommendation of conditional approval provided that the following items are addressed prior to the recordation of the plat. The first being that same letter, or provide a copy of the UDOT review and approval letter, provide a design for the rock wall by IGES for review and inspector to verify prior to wall installation. Number 3 is ensure that the 100-year overflow path follows the drainage easement as stated in the review comments from Ensign Engineering. Number 4 is the stormwater maintenance plan needs to be submitted, reviewed, and approved. And then number 5, on the engineer's cost estimate, there's a few manholes that seem to be missing and one that he couldn't identify in the plan. So we just need to basically resolve that engineer's cost estimate to be the final number. You'll see that the applications are found in the packet with the fees being paid. The supporting documentation found thereafter in the form of the engineer's cost estimate. review response comments are found thereafter to the staff and engineering comments from the last review. Signage and home plan detail, that conditional variance request form from, or not conditional, excuse me, variance request form from UDOT regarding the road access, and then landscaping, and then the plan itself. So a lot of documentation, but it's very similar to what was provided before. So with that, I would defer to council. If you have any other questions for me or Mr.
Okay,
I guess
we're
it'd be
gonna-
Mr. Anderson at this time that would probably address it. Adam Anderson, be present for them.
Okay, council, we're going to address these as three separate issues. And so at this time, all we're doing is deciding whether or not to untable this item before we have any discussion on it. Any questions for Mr. Eggett?
Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question, yes.
Mr. Eggett, does this fall outside of what you would normally see if the council were to provide a conditional approval?
The only thing, and I might defer a little bit to Mr. Douglas, would be that stormwater maintenance plan. Typically, that is a document that we see fairly regularly, or I guess not fairly. In every instance, it's usually not that will hold up a project. But we have seen a time or two, other times where there's been a missing item or a document or an engineering item that needs to be resolved that hasn't been, and the council has approved that. So the stormwater maintenance plan not being provided is something that is a little unique, but again, I don't know how Mr. Douglas feels about that, but that's how I would answer that question.
Can I ask Mr. Douglas how he feels about it?
Yeah, Mr. Douglas, will you come on up to the microphone, please?
So again, typically we would have that plan before now. Usually it still has a few review comments on the plan, just like the Tesla one did, but they had provided the complete plan and everything on it. As long as we have a stipulation in there that we get it before it's recorded, because that document has to be recorded with the plat at the county, so they have to be done at the same time. There is kind of a, we need to make sure that's done because that makes a requirement with the state as well. So it is a little bit different, but I think we could work through it as well. So I guess I'll leave that up to you, what you guys want to do that way. So.
Thanks.
Any, Councilor Arnold?
I would ask a question to Steve Brooks of what you said. That, I mean, if this is going to be the regular process, then this should be the regular process. If you don't want the documents to be given to you before they do the review, before it gets in the packet, is that going to be the process now? Or are we going to hold people to having the process that is supposed to be done?
Okay. I guess processes depend on you guys. You're throwing that back in my lap, but it's whether or not you're willing to accept something like that. That is kind of a big one. It always has been a big one. But I generally turn to Sean and Todd on those things if they're comfortable with it, because we can refuse to sign that and keep that from going any further into the county. So we do have the upper hand on that one. But I would prefer that it was in. That's the way we always are on these things, but we can make it work on that one. If it was a couple other things, then I'd be more concerned about it. But I defer to Sean on that one if Sean thinks we can pull it off. Because it's not something that's unworkable. It's something that we can make work. Does that sound like an attorney answer, Alan?
Yeah. I was going to say thanks for sidestepping that question.
But just to clarify, you and the mayor both have to sign the plat before it's recorded.
That is correct,
So
yes.
really, we could catch it if.
That is
we needed
correct,
to.
yes.
Not to flip-flop on how I've talked in other meetings. I still feel strongly about being prepared, but just to be clear.
And I think it's well noted that everything we do, we look back on and say, well, we've done this in the past. Good or bad. Good or bad.
We also look back and say we got burnt on that one too.
That's true. Yeah. Hopefully we
The
learn.
thing is, we're supposed to be prepared.
I have a
It
question for
shouldn't, it
Sean.
shouldn't even be in the packet if it's not prepared, if it's not there.
Councilor Hilton has a question for Sean. Mr. Douglas.
Douglas, did you feel like you had enough time for you and all your stakeholders on your staff to be able to review this?
So we reviewed everything except for that document, and we didn't have that document to review.
Okay.
So everything else we reviewed.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we would need a motion to untable if we're going to do this, or if we don't have a motion, we'll just move on.
I'll make the motion to untable and consider the ordinance number 964.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, that motion dies for lack of a second. We will, do we need to discuss 2B and 2C? Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, come on up to the mic.
I'm Adam Anderson, Sandy, Utah, Goldcrest Homes. We're back here, last 16th was the last time we were here. Regarding the maintenance plan, there's some discussion on the 7th. We were advised by our engineers, let's make sure we got this detention issue resolved before we start designing, come together with a plan. And this is not the city issue, this is as much our issue internally, but on our advice we did that. We had a conference and conferred with Mr. Douglas and Mr. Freeman, our internal engineers on the 8th. We came back and
Councilor Arnold?
This is not untabled.
Yeah, I mean, we're not really going to rehash what we just did.
but I do have the plan.
Okay, was it submitted with your packet for the agenda?
I submitted on the packet on the 1st. I know we wanted to add that hydraulic separator in there, so I sent back on Thursday when I got it to me, back to my engineer team. They worked on Monday over the holiday to try to get this thing done. We did submit it today, but I know it's late to get it in for the packet.
Yeah.
However, it's done. And
Okay.
so, in a show of good faith, I know you said you're going to get burnt, but we're doing the work. In fact, I got a long list of stuff we've done since the last time we met. If you're interested in hearing that, that's great. If not, I understand. Whatever the action is at this point, I guess I'll leave it up to this body.
Okay, thank you very much. We will try and get it in the next meeting, I guess, in that next packet. So, do we have a meeting on the 5th? Is that when the, no?
It's the 4th, right?
Yeah.
Well-
We would generally move that one. I don't remember what,
It's the 4th of July.
Yeah, the Tuesday is the 4th of July, so.
To Wednesday.
yeah, what we generally do on that, and
Move it
in
to
years
Wednesday.
past, we've moved that to the 5th if the council wants to hold one.
Okay.
Because they have traditionally not held one the day after the 4th.
Well, it sounds like we might have a petitioner that would like to be on that agenda, so we'll
Okay.
see at that point. So, okay, very good. Moving on to item number 3. This is a public hearing to receive and consider public comments regarding the following. This is a single public hearing that will be used to receive comments on all 4 of these items. It's number A, amending the Riverdale City budget for fiscal year 23, which
Mayor,
is,
sorry to interrupt, but I think we only addressed a motion on 2A, not 2B or 2C.
okay.
I apologize for
Yeah, that's
interrupting,
okay.
but
Do we want
I
to go
only
through
made a
those?
motion on
2A, okay.
2A.
Okay. We can discuss those, that's fine. So 2B, motion to untable in consideration of resolution 2023-19 regarding a proposed planned residential unit development, PRUD overlay request applied to the Coleman View Estates, PRUD subdivision approximately 5368 South, 1050 West. Mr. Eggett.
I don't know that I have a lot to add other than this is the PRUD overlay element that would be like a conditional use for the subdivision. The documentation in this case, it's all the same documentation as nothing was changed absent some of the changes to the original subdivision design. That updated subdivision design is in the packet with it, but other than that, it's the same documentation you had before. And there were no issues that I believe staff had with this section of the request.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Eggett? Seeing none, we would need a motion to untable that resolution.
I'll make the motion to untable resolution 2023-19.
There's no subdivision to put a PRUD to.
At current time, that statement would be correct.
Okay. So we do have a motion. We do not have a second, so we will move on to item number C. Motion to untable in consideration of resolution 2023-18 regarding a proposed development agreement between Riverdale City and Goldcrest Homes, Riverdale. Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. This is, again, the development agreement that would be tied to the PRUD subdivision. this has been reviewed by City Attorney Mr. Brooks. If you have any questions for him relative to the actual document, you'll see the red line found in the packet, and the updated red line is noted in the packet. Original red line is in red, updated red line is in blue, refining items even since the last discussion on the 16th. So that is the newest form of that development agreement. I know Mr. Brooks has talked to the attorney for Goldcrest Homes as well in refining the language in that packet. So that's basically the update from the 16th as far as the narrative on where it's at. Other than that, there's nothing else I don't think to add at this point, and I would defer to the council how you'd like to proceed.
Okay. Are there questions for Mr. Eggett?
Do we have to have an approved subdivision to approve the development agreement?
I don't know.
Not, I would say no. I mean, that's not uncommon. The development agreement is primarily designed to make sure that water's in place. And so we've done, I mean, that's something we would do to make sure that they had some assurance to move forward. So I think you would be okay on that one.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we would need a motion to untable Resolution 2023-18.
I'll make the motion to untable and consider resolution 2023-18.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Arnold?
No.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Hentz?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
No.
All right. So that motion or that resolution is now untabled by a vote of 3-2. So now we can have discussion on that. Mr. Eggett or Mr. Brooks, do you have anything further you'd like to provide about that development agreement?
Like I said, I don't know that I'd state much more than that. I mean, primarily it's focused on the water because that is a requirement of the city council. We bring water into any development, and this could not proceed without that. And this is one of those where we're going through the option that we have through Weber Basin to acquire enough water that they can provide that for their development. So this we could go forward on. It's not binding, I mean, necessarily until we have the money anyway. So. And we wouldn't go forward unless there was a development. There wouldn't be any reason to. So,
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Eggett or Mr. Brooks regarding this? Councilor Arnold.
I just think it's not appropriate at this time to move forward with the developers agreement when the development still has things to be put together. It's foolish.
Any other comments?
I have a comment.
Councilor Hanson.
I would say it would be difficult for the developer to move forward with this development when he doesn't have the water required to move forward with the development, which can only be done by the development agreement, making a circular issue. So this would give him the opportunity to get the water required, complete the subdivision changes, and then be prepared to move forward with the project.
Okay.
They have to have the developers agreement to get water. That's not true.
well, that is not true. They can do it a different way. This is just one way of doing it. Yeah.
They do the Weber Basin way, right?
Right.
Any other comments? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 2023-18.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have and a second? Any discussion on that motion? This is a motion to approve Resolution 2023-18. Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Stevens?
No.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
No.
Counselor Henson?
Yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Okay, that resolution passes by a vote of 3-2. Thank you, Councilor Hanson, for having me go through those items. Did you have something, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir. May I approach?
Yeah, just briefly.
Sorry, again, just for clarification, could I understand why we're tabling, just so I understand what I need to do as a landowner? You said stuff.
Yeah, where that's not before the body, where they didn't untable it, they're not allowed to talk about it.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so that's it. We'll meet
But
with
the city,
We can talk.
the
Yeah,
city
we'll
staff
talk
will
to you
get you.
tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Those guys will get you straightened out on that. Very good. Thank you, Councilor Hanson, for having me go through those items. It's important that we do follow the agenda and go over every item. Okay. Item number 3, public hearing This is a public hearing for 4 items. The first one is item A, amending the Riverdale City budget for fiscal year 23. Number B is proposed amendments to the Riverdale City Code, Human Resources Manual, Employees Classification Compensation Plan, referred to in 1-7-1, 1-7-2, salaries of the City Council and Mayor, and 1-7F-6, salary of the Justice Court Judge. Item C, non-reciprocal interfund activity transfer of resources utilized by the city's general fund as provided by the city's water fund. And item D, adopting the Riverdale City budget for fiscal year 24. This will be your only opportunity to speak to these items during this public hearing. After the public hearing, we will move on to the approval of those items. We would need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, the public hearing is now opened for those 4 items. Seeing no public comment, we would need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. The public hearing is now closed. Item 4, consideration of ordinance 967, proposed amendments to the Riverdale City Code, Human Resources Manual, Employees Classification Compensation Plan, referred to 1-7-1, 1-7-2, salaries of the City Council and Mayor, and 1-7F-6, salary of the Justice Court Judge. Mr. Carden and Mr. Brooks.
This is the one that we do every year. This covers you as mayor and council for your salaries. It also covers the employees' compensation package and the judge as well. This is done as an ordinance because we amend the code. It specifically states these items in the code. And so we've done that, made that with the everything we normally do every year, just followed the same procedures. And so the ordinance that's in place there is identical to the one last year, other than the numbers that have changed under our normal processes.
Any questions for Mr. Brooks? Seeing none, a motion would be in order. We have a long meeting tonight. Let's keep it going here. I can't make motions, and I can't vote, so.
Move to approve ordinance 967.
Okay, we have a motion to approve ordinance 967. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. There we go. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Wait a sec. Aren't we supposed to have discussion?
That's what.
I had discussion before the motion and discussion on the motion. We're pretty much voting now.
No.
Okay, no.
Okay, well, all right, no.
Counselor Arnold?
No.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Okay. That passes with 3 in favor and 2 opposed. All right. We'll now move on to item 5, consideration of resolution 2023-21 containing Riverdale City's certified property tax rate of 0.001463 as calculated by the Weber County Auditor. Mr. Carden.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is just certified tax rate. As I said earlier, it's actually went up, and that's indicative that property values within the city have dropped. From looking at other entities in Weber County, it looks like that is consistent across the county. So
Interesting.
So most entities that say they just hold the rate wouldn't be able to probably do that this year, at least within Weber County. So
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any
Are there
other questions you have.
or discussion for Mr. Carden? Counselor Arnold?
Move to approve resolution 2023-21 as stated within the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Very good. Item number 6, consideration of Resolution 2023-22, the non-reciprocal interfund activity transfer of resources utilized by the city's general fund as provided by the city's water fund. The estimated value of these culinary water services is $80,000. Mr. Cardin.
Thank you, Mayor. So just as you talked earlier, this is basically the city paying its water bill. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilor Arnold.
Move to approve resolution 2023-22 as stated within the packet.
Second.
We have a
Do I need the money? Steve? Do I need to put the
Yeah,
80,000?
I'd put it in, yeah.
Stated within the packet with the bill of $80,000.
Second.
A second is okay with that. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Number 7, review fraud risk discussion for submission to the state auditor's office. Mr. Cardin.
So we just have to bring this before you guys. We made one little tweak, so our score actually went up. But it's just so that you can see it and kind of know where we're at. And then we have to submit that to the state auditors, and our auditors look at it each year. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
And do they just have to do like a consensus, or are we just approving?
I think we've just done a consensus in the past.
Okay. If everyone is okay with that submission to the state, please just raise your hand. And that is a consensus. Everybody was in favor of that. Okay. Number 8, consideration of Resolution 2023-23, amending the Riverdale City budget for fiscal year 23. Mr. Cardin.
So we're just making one little change. You can see it impacts a couple different funds, but it's mainly just increasing our transfer, trying to stay within compliance if we end up with extra fund balance at the year end, but we won't know till we get our last sales tax deposits in like July and August. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Cardin on that? Councilor Arnold.
Move to approve resolution 2023-23 as stated within the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Agenda item 9, consideration of resolution 2023-24, adopting the Riverdale City budget for fiscal year 24. Mr. Cardin.
So this is basically the exact same budget as we talked about in our budget meeting in May. We did make 4 little tweaks that are identified in the packet, I believe on like page 348-ish. But there's no significant changes. It's just got the certified tax rate. I'm happy to identify any questions you may have.
Councilor Arnold. Oh, sorry, Councilor Hanson. Sorry.
I have 2 questions, and I apologize for not bringing them up at the last meeting. I noted in the mayor council budget there was a little over $18,000 set aside for the 2030 plan. Is there an explanation on what that's going toward?
So from what I remember, the reason we originally put that money there is we were using Fred Philpott, if you guys remember, several years ago. We wanted some money there in case we wanted him to do additional work or those kind of things, that we just had some funding that like we could be a little quicker responsive.
Okay.
And so that's why we left a little funding there.
Okay. And then the other one was there was $100,000 under the fire budget for emergency, I can't remember exactly how it was worded, emergency management maybe?
Is it in the fire or is it in the capital improvements?
Might have been capital improvements. Is
Okay.
that for the generators, or what was that?
I believe, let me look really quick. I think what you're referring to, we leave a little money there. We've done that ever since we had like our landslide issue, that we just had a little money there available, and we did the same thing.
Under miscellaneous projects?
Yes, and we just left it there this year with the flooding and stuff, just not knowing where we would be at, so that we'd have a little money that if something big came up at the beginning of the fiscal year, we were able to act rather than have to do a budget amendment and those kind of things.
Okay, that's great, thanks.
And just one quick thing on the 2030. I'm not sure this is how we would use Fred Philpott, but I've asked Cody to actually sit down and take a look at 2030 and also like our capital projects fund or any money that we might have, and kind of lay out, okay, we're going to lose this amount in 2030. So that first year we're going to need, we figured it'll be about $2 million that first year. In 2031, we're going to need hopefully a little less, maybe 1.5. But how much money do we need set aside to get us through that year by year if we don't get the 2/10? And that gives us a target to have in that fund. Once that hits, we can draw off of that and hopefully kind of smooth that out. So I have asked him to do a little bit of a study. I don't know if that's, some of that money might be for some professional help with that, but that's one thing we're working on. It doesn't look great for us to get the extension, but we might still get it. But if we don't, we want to have some money to kind of try to smooth that out. So. Okay, Counselor Stevens.
Yeah. Last year in the budget, there was $100,000 that was struck from that budget that was designated for improvements or for furniture equipment. I don't see where that was, or a portion of that was put in. Did I miss that?
We didn't put it back in. I don't think we ever got like a consensus at the last meeting. So we just figured if you guys wanted to add that in at this meeting, you could.
I think it would be appropriate. Even, 100,000's a lot. Increments of, say, 50,000. That's what I would, if there's a consensus on that.
If I could just address that a little bit. We've done most of the other buildings in the city but this one, and this one's getting to that point. We average between about $5,000 and $10,000 per office to upgrade those with the new cabinets and furniture and things like that. It just depends on what you end up going with. 50,000. I mean, we'd have to do this in more than 1 year. Even our court out here, the court clerks are, the way that's situated, we need to revamp all that too. It's difficult for them to see the window even when customers come up and stuff. And we've installed those doorbells and things to help with that. But I mean, it needs to be done at some point in time whenever we get to that. This one's probably the most outdated of all of them. I don't know that we'd do much to this room, but we would start maybe in the court and in the main reception area upstairs and Stacy's office and things like that. All that's pretty old. I mean, other than what Shelley did years ago with the tile, we haven't really done much at all with this building. So it's getting outdated. I mean, the electrical, I'd love to just revamp the whole building if we could, but that's not really an option. But we should be able to make it look a little bit better and operate a little bit better with the new addition of our tech that'll start next week. We've got to revamp some stuff back there too. So there's a lot of things we have coming up that we need to be looking at.
So what does it take to put that in?
How would they go about amending that?
We could make a motion as part of your motion to approve it if you decide to. I think Cody's got a spot where we could make that work.
You would do it all as
insert
one
that.
motion to approve the budget with this
With that
change.
change, yeah.
50,000 for furniture. It's not capital
Improvements.
or just improvements.
I think that's fine. And we would do it in the capital improvement fund. The expenditure would probably go in 7,000, which is Civic Center, and you could add a budget note for that. And then the offset would go in 2,000. So it would just increase both of those by the whatever amount you guys saw fit. So.
Councilor Arnold.
So my work just revamped our whole work area. It didn't provide a single thing. I mean, we're not more productive. We're not. It was just a boondoggle, and we're talking about 2030. If you have, I think, if you have changes that need to be made, like electrical or something like that, in capital projects, that we should look at it. But putting lipstick on a pig, if it's a pig, let's change it. But if it's just putting lipstick on a pig, I don't see why we put the money when we're talking about cutting things 2030, all of the issues like that. And I mean, if we have something in capital projects, we should do that, but not lipstick.
Any other questions or discussions about this item? Councilor Arnold.
Move to approve Resolution 2023-24 as stated within the packet.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
No.
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes, or that resolution passes with 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Item number 10, consideration of resolution 2023-25 to approve the 2023-24 consolidated fee schedule. Mr. Cardin.
Thank you, Mayor. So most of these are just as we talked about in our budget hearings. Most of these are just pass-through increases from the various vendors. For instance, with the Weber, with the water fund, it's Weber Basin, their increase. We're just recommending we pass that increase along to the residents. The only difference besides those is, if you remember, we talked about garbage cans. We would like to bill for, I think we ultimately decided for brand new residents, or if they get an additional garbage can, that they just pay the value of that garbage can. And that does a couple things. One, if you think down here, like with Bach Homes, what that would cost if we had to provide 750 new garbage cans and recycling cans for larger developments, trying to charge the new development for the new development, not putting that burden on the current residents. And then also with additional cans, same kind of thing. So those are the changes. We did miss one change, and that's probably on me. We talked to you about increasing the lunch donation from $3.50 to $4. That's in section 1-12-10. So whoever makes the motion, if we could also increase that to $4, remember to go with Meals on Wheels and match that. I failed to get that change in the consolidated fee schedule. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I did have a question. So
Counselor Hanson.
it's included in here, the cost of the new can, or is that? I didn't see that on the list.
I believe we've got it in here. Let me see if I can find it for you really quick.
Oh, okay. I see it right above the first can. So you're saying that you're thinking the developer will pay for the first garbage can in new developments?
On the building permit is what we were thinking. Like we just charge them for the water meter and those kind of things. We'd do the same thing
Not
for the garbage
actual
can.
resident themselves, and the city will still provide like repairs or whatever.
Right, and that's what we were thinking. If we did it this way, then the city could take, because it kind of gets into like, well, who broke the can? Was that you? Was that the hauler? It gets a little hard, but we were thinking with the new cans, that's easy to pass that cost along to who's incurring it.
Okay.
It would
So-
also be the second, if you ordered a second can, the initial purchase on that.
And I do appreciate you keeping the current residents in mind with stuff like that, because they may not know, but if they found out that that they were paying for the garbage cans for this other development, that would probably be kind of hard for them to, they don't want to subsidize something like that. So thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on the consolidated fee schedule? Counselor Arnold.
Move to approve resolution 2023-24 as stated within the budget, with the exception of the change that Mr. Carden had requested, taking the lunch fee to $4 from $3.50.
Did you say 24 or 25?
25.
Oh, 25. Sorry.
25.
Motion changes. Sorry.
Second is okay with that. Okay. And he did get the amendment for the lunch donation to $4. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Merrill?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Hilton?
Yes. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, council. We have a budget for next year. That is a good feeling. I know the city has put in, the city staff has put in a great deal of work, and I'm sure they're breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief that is in place. Number 11, discussion of possible action regarding the fifth sales tax option. This is a new thing that was approved by the state that counties can charge. It's a 2/10 increase in the sales tax, and Weber County is considering adding that. So 2/10, it's kind of interesting that it's 2/10 because that's what we get to charge as Riverdale City on our sales taxes, that 2/10. This is how it gets distributed. So there's 2/10. A quarter of that, or 0.05%, goes to the cities. Okay, and that can be used for transit, roads. It's that type of funds. And just so you know, for Riverdale, that would amount because it's based on your sales tax, it would amount to about $308,000. Pretty significant. Just by way of comparison, a city with similar population, Washington Terrace would get about $67,000 if the county chooses to implement that. Roy would get about $318,000. North Ogden's another one that we look at quite frequently. They'd get about $171,000. So it could really provide quite a bit of benefit to Riverdale. Half of that money, 0.10%, goes to UTA for 3 years. They get that. And then after that, it's split between two. 0.05 goes to a transit district that will be formed, and then 0.05 goes to TTIF, which are county road funds that we can apply for, and sometimes we get, if we're lucky, we get some of that money. Then the last 0.05% goes to the county for their projects. The county is asking for kind of an agreement or a consensus from the councils and mayors on whether they should implement that or not. And so I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it and see where you're at on that. It would be an increase to our sales tax. And so, it's always hard to look at that, but it would probably provide almost a disproportionate benefit to us because our residents wouldn't be paying that much extra sales tax, but we would be getting a lot. But any thoughts or discussion on that?
Or enhance our chances to hang on to our 0.2%.
That's a good question, actually. I think it helps us because it's almost just another example of adding a 0.2.
Right,
2/10.
and it goes back to the same argument that we keep making, that they keep draining our sales tax and putting it everywhere else but here, and this is one that we almost need just to help us, just to keep going.
And I believe, it's not an increase at this point, right? Because isn't there already a transportation 0.2% in place? I believe. I could be wrong, but I think there's one in place that's expiring, and this is taking its place. So you won't see your sales tax necessarily go up. It would just remain the same.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they've authorized it's additional. They've authorized the third quarter, the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter was that Proposition 1 a few years ago that was kind of heated. It was set to a vote. The state required that as like a proposition that people had to vote for on the ballot. This one is just left up to the county whether they want to. But I don't believe it's replacing something.
Because I thought there was a UTA portion that was going away, and that's why there was the 3-year UTA funding in it. Is it's to bridge the gap? I could be wrong, but I thought there was that's why the legislature allowed this fifth is because it's like, well, it was already in place. We're just going to allow counties to keep it.
Well, and if I understood it when I was talking to the tax commission for my job, it wasn't based off of time. So the way that it's called the first, second, third, fourth quarter, it's actually of the dollar.
Right.
And so there is no fifth. It's because it's replacing. And it may just be the UTA portion. It's replacing that portion that either some cities never passed and counties never passed, or it's expiring and they're trying to pick up some extra. But I think they did add some extra uses, if I remember right, on the fifth, where this could even be used for like trails, any kind of transportation, not just roads.
Yes,
so it
active
gives us,
transportation. Yeah,
gives us a lot more opportunity than those prior taxes did, where it was restricted to transit only.
Any other, Councilor Stevens?
This is, we're really not the decision-making body on this. It's the county.
The county.
So it's you're just looking for what the mood or the consensus or and I just find it complete folly to raise sales tax, because this is what happened with Proposition 1, which raised, I think, 0.25%.
Yeah, it was a quarter, yep.
Is Weber County passed it. I think initially Davis did not, and so it was spotty. So all of a sudden you had a different differential of where you would have different sales taxes, and so what we saw was other municipalities came in and said, especially on high ticket items where a car, which was many thousands of dollars, where they said, hey, you can window shop in Riverdale, but come to Morgan and buy, because we'll save you money, because Riverdale charges the taxes. And it's just like, okay, it sounds all peaches and unicorns and kumbaya to say, oh yes, we're going to get this money. It's a folly, and it shouldn't, there's no benefits. I mean, the long-term benefits of raising sales tax ultimately is going to hurt us more than it helps us. But that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Any other comments? Can I get a little bit of a temperature check on this? Who would be in favor of it? Okay, pretty much nobody. All right, that's good to know. That actually helps me with some guidance. Because if I go to the county and say we don't support it, it's going to be kind of, I think for the most part, people are going to support it. And so I will want to have a little bit to lean on and say, well, I talked to our council, we're just not in favor or something like that. So, yeah, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you. Okay.
I would maybe suggest that we phrase that well so they don't think that we're feeling so rich that we don't need it, more so that we just felt that it would impact our overall sales.
Negative impact on us.
Brayden, the thing is, personally, I don't believe it, but I agree with Bart that we're not the decision-making body on this, and they're going to do it if they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And for us to say, yeah, we support you, I mean, maybe stated properly is like, we support your decision.
Sure.
Something like that, because...
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't really appreciate their method with it anyway, trying to kind of put it on the mayors, that it was okay with the mayors. It's their decision to make.
Yeah. Right.
And I still remember when sales tax was 5%, and now it's like 7.5, so, I mean, eventually it's going to get to 10%.
It's like when you're running for office,
Yeah.
and you knock on somebody's door and they ask you about national stuff, and you're just like, and we're water, sewer, and garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't do that. It's crazy.
So I was already kind of feeling that way, but it's helpful. Bart or Councilor Stevens articulated some good points, and it's good. I feel pretty comfortable going back in.
With Proposition 1, what ultimately happened is the state legislature stepped in, recognizing there was disparity up and down the Wasatch Front, and they stepped in and said either everybody is or isn't, and so to mitigate those disparities.
Yeah, they did. They stepped in. So, okay, good discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
are you going to allow time for the seniors to speak?
Yes, during the RDA meeting.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to make
Yep,
sure.
We are planning on hearing from them. Yes, absolutely. Okay, we are moving on to comments. We are getting towards the end of this meeting. Are there any comments from the city council for this meeting? Okay. Comments from the city staff for this meeting?
No, Mayor.
Okay. All right. And I will save any comments that I might have, and so we would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
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 All right. We stand adjourned from this meeting. Thank you very much. Does anybody need a little break, or is everybody good to go right into the RDA meeting?
Let's go.
Let's go. All right. We'd like to
Excuse me, can I just, is the video going to run on the RDA? Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry? Oh,
Okay, if we decide to go into a closed session. All right. We would like to welcome everybody to our Riverdale City RDA Board meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Please let the record show that all RDA board members are present, as well as members of the city staff and members of the public. We will now have a time for public comment. This is an opportunity to address the Riverdale RDA Redevelopment Agency regarding your concerns or ideas. Please try to limit your time to 3 minutes. We do encourage you all to share your thoughts during this time. This will be the only time during the meeting for you to speak. The later parts of the meeting will be a discussion between the board, but there will not be public comment during that time. So if you have thoughts or comments, please express them during the public comment, which opens now. Yeah, come on up. Don't raise your hand. You guys just come on up. State your name and the city you live in, please.
Ron Dilly, Riverdale. So I sent all of you an email. Did all of you get an email from me?
Yes.
Yes? No? No comment? No
Not a
comment?
discussion.
What? No, this isn't a discussion. Okay, thanks. So I'm here tonight. Since I only have 3 minutes, I better make it quick. I'm here. I'm actually the bishop of the Riverdale 7th Ward, which includes the senior center. And these fine people have asked me to be their spokesman tonight. I guess they can all get up. If y'all want to get up, you can too. But they've asked me to kind of be a spokesman for them. As I indicated in my email to the board members, I just wanted to re-emphasize what I had said in that email, and that is that, I don't think any of the people behind me are rich or well-to-do. Maybe some of them have more money than others, but I know some of them are living Social Security payment to Social Security payment, maybe retirement check to retirement check. The one person I actually talked to in detail, she doesn't have the money to pay the increase in her rent. So I am here to ask you to be charitable and considerate of what this 38% increase in their rent is doing to these people. So I know there's a shortfall in the senior center. I understand that their rent is low. I'd like to be paying that amount. If I could pay that much, I would probably move in there too. It is low, and this isn't a debate on whether it's too high or too low. It is very low, but some of these people moved in expecting that to be their rent, and that's what they could afford. And increasing that just places an additional burden on them. So I would, I don't represent the church here. I'm just here to represent. They've asked me to be their spokesman, so I have graciously accepted that from them. But they are very concerned. You can tell there's a lot of emotion back here. And I would just ask you to reconsider increasing their rent as much as they are. They were told at one time it'd be over 2 years, and then they were told it'd be over 3 years, and then they were told that it's going to be almost immediate. So there's no planning. They can't prepare for this. It's just being thrown on them. You guys hold all the cards in this deck. You guys got to make the rules. But it is a hardship on a lot of these people, and it means a lot to them. So my 3 minutes is probably up. Are you timing me? I've tried to talk fast because it's like any minute I'm expecting someone to say.
It's about
It's
3
roughly
minutes.
3 minutes.
Nobody's going to shoot you.
Well, I had a whole thing prepared I was going to read, but it's like
Don't
3
read your
minutes.
whole
I can't do
email.
all that. I did look at the budget. I didn't find anything current out on the website, but I understand. Up until the RDA money was lost, the senior center was doing okay. Probably, I don't know if it was 1 year or 2 years ago, but there's been some hits there. I understand that you don't want to offend any residents because you're subsidizing these people in their housing unit. And I think they understand that too. But on the other hand, you guys got beat up pretty bad over the Leslie trailer park, and you got beat up pretty good over the increase in the property tax increases. I just think of, what would it look like on the Standard Examiner if their headline was Riverdale RDA board votes to increase rent 38%, and what it does to senior citizens who they aren't out. They can't go get another job. They can't get a better job. Some of them may have to resort to maybe being a greeter at Walmart. I don't know, but the one person I talked to can't afford it, and so she's asked the church to help her with the increase. So just begging you to reconsider. If you could spread that out, it'd, I'm sure, help a lot of these people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dilly.
My name's Dan Pearson. I'm a resident of the senior center apartments. I didn't get a chance to talk to Mr. Dilly before we started, but the percentage that he said, the 38%, is what you're raising now from July to August, okay? The actual percentage from just in the last 8 months, what that will be is 52%. And that's an awfully large raise to come up with at one time. And that, I just wanted to mention that it's 52% in 8 months, not just the 38. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
My name's Marie Nye, and I live in the apartments. Like Dan said, that was a pretty big increase. I used to own apartments years ago, in California even, but I would never have dreamed of raising any of my renters' rent that much in one whack. It's just inconceivable. But I think the thing that irritated me the most is when we were asked to sign, last November, we were asked to sign new leases, which we all agreed and did. And that time, they told us there would be an increase in rent. But then there was a letter signed by Steve Brooks telling us that it would be spread out over a 3-year period. Now, someone who maybe had a little loan that they were paying off or something could maybe budget things to where they could have it paid off in 3 years. So maybe we could swallow it. So we were slowly trying to swallow that big of an increase over a 3-year period. Then we get this letter in June, also signed by Steve Brooks, saying they changed their mind. We're not going to spread it over 3 years. I'm not sure that would be illegal, but I would like to say, in my opinion, it's immoral. And thank you.
My name's Barbara Anderson. I live at the senior apartments. And to give you an example, I moved in there January 2022. My rent was $585, and now I'm to pay $891. That's a large increase in a year and a half. I bet not one of you could do an increase like that on your mortgages of that big percentage. And it's the fact that I relied on that 3 years to make plans. I had at the time, I'd been on some other waiting lists. I could have gone to another apartment, but when they came back and said we had 3 years, I made the decision to stay. Now the apartments, affordable apartments, are a lot less availability than at that time too. Each month it gets harder and harder to get another replacement for the apartment. And I don't know about you, but mine's gone from $585 to $891 in a year and a half. And I don't know how you would expect anyone to make plans with that type of increase. You know, I was willing, I mean, I didn't like the increase when they said we had 3 years, but I figured that's something I could do. Because I could plan the 3 years out and figure out how to pay for it, but not just, you know, in one, and then being told a couple months later, no, we've decided it's going to be the whole thing. It's just very difficult to make any plans and have any options of anywhere to go, because a lot of the affordable housing has waiting lists after waiting list after waiting lists. So, thank you.
Carol Sands. The mayor should know me as his royal pain in the derriere.
It is good to put a face with it. Thank you.
It's just that we are not just simply residents at the senior apartments. We're family, we're friends, we watch out for each other. If all of a sudden we don't see someone or we don't hear from them, we're going in and checking them out, find out that they're okay. And this increase right now is going to hurt because you have, like Barbara said, you have plans made out, and then, okay, by the end of those 2 or 3 years, I can handle it. But not all at once, because like she says, the 585 to 891, we don't make that kind of money. And I'm sure not going out and looking for work. And the stress with our age group is really telling right now. It really is. And you can just feel the atmosphere in the whole apartment building. It's not the congenial, happy one that we've had. And we just need to be able to get back to that. Thank you.
Carol Daz, Senior Living. We do run the senior center. The volunteers run the senior center. They only have 3 people that are employed. The rest of us run it, take care of it, and try to make it the very best we can. And like she said, the attitude is just not the same. It's just, I've been there 15 years, and it's really changed a lot, and it's kind of too bad. There may be a lot of us have to move. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Seeing no other comments, we will continue on with our agenda. We do not have any presentations or reports. We do not have any consent items. We do have some action items. We'll start with letter E. Action item number 1, discussion regarding the senior center rental rates. Who would like to take this? Mr. Brooks, Mr. Carden?
Can I just add one thing?
Sure, Councilor Steve, or Board Member Stevens. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, let me just say the decision makers are sitting up here. The letter that you got and all those things he's acting upon what the decision maker said. Okay, so just so that's clarified.
I think that's a good clarification.
Thank you,
Mr. Brooks.
Bart. I kind of felt like I was at the end of a sword here. So, I can tell you what we have. Rich can help us out here. We have the documentation for all these things. One of the problems, and probably the biggest problem, is we let this go way too long, and we never should have done that. But as we sit down and we look at this long-term wise, if we don't make changes, at some point in time, we will run out of money out there. We're not there yet. There's still some RDA money, and we didn't necessarily lose RDA money. We lost the income that was coming in, so that did end. So that's all we have. And when that's gone, it's gone. And at that point, then something's got to happen. Something's going to give. And so if you're going to continue a senior center, you've got to pay for it somehow. And so as we sat down, and again, this wasn't my tenure necessarily, this has gone on for years, and we've let those rates drop to a point where it's way, way low. So to bring them up, I mean, we had to find a standard. And speaking with Cody Carden, Cody was familiar with this because he's done audits for different organizations over the years, so he knew that the HUD rate was kind of the going standard. It's really the only solid standard you can find anywhere. And so when we looked at those numbers, we were so far behind, it was almost shocking. Initially, when Rich and I, and even Cody sat down and talked about this, we wanted to do a 3-year plan because we were trying to make it as least impactful as we can, but the plan wasn't necessarily to postpone the raises because that's got to be done. It was more to give them time to look for other options. and that was the primary purpose of a 3-year plan. We recognized this is impacting, and we knew it was going to hurt, and we knew it was going to be hard. But even in our meetings with the county, I mean, they were almost shocked at how low we were in comparison to everybody. And I mean, these are tough decisions we have to make. As we look at our neighboring cities, they have pretty much gotten rid of their senior programs. I mean, they still have them, but they don't sink money into them very often. They provide a building, basically, our neighboring cities right on both sides of us. And yet we do a number of things. I mean, even in this, housing is not typically something that a city would ever do. And I'll explain why I'm really concerned about that, because we are competing against the private market when we do this. And so there are landlords out there that make their living off of rentals. And by us providing rentals, especially at a really, really discounted rate, we're competing against even our own citizens, and we're using taxpayer money to do it. There's just so many things that are fundamentally wrong and flawed with that. And I recognize it has great impact and it hurts people, but we will lose everything at some point in time if we don't do changes. And so looking at this saying, yeah, our hope was to go 3 years, and even with this new proposed rate to put us on the HUD level, that's at 2022 standards. That's not even this year's standard. We're still not caught up. And so there will be another one that will be issued in September that will be effective in January. And so we did do one last year, we've done one this year, and we're looking at another one. I mean, we're still going to go into the 3rd year, and we still will be lucky if we get caught up then, just to get us at the HUD rate. And so it's not like we're trying to pick on anybody. We're looking at this as an overall project saying, can we save this program and how do we do it? And it's getting, concerning because we've got to make plans. If we don't, then it will be just like, a property tax increase at an astronomical rate at some point in time. And so, I feel bad. Trust me, I do. I know Rich does. We're not trying to pick on anybody. We're just trying to save a program as best we can. And that's where we're at. The HUD rate is about as low as we can find in the area. And that's not anybody's fault here or there. It's just the economics of the whole thing. Rents have gone through the roof. We're seeing that across the board. I have 2 kids that want to move back here and they can't afford it. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. The county offers a lot of programs and a lot of assistance and things like that. But as for us, we've got to make changes. We don't want to make these changes, but it also shouldn't be shared or burdened on 9,000 residents to cover, a few apartments. I mean, I recognize how cold that sounds, but it's not fair to them to do that and compete against the private market. There's a lot of issues that are going on here. It's not just a simple yes or no kind of thing. We came to you and we said, we're not going to get there. We're still not going to get there. And you guys said, get there. And so that's what we've done. We've taken the steps, and one of the comments was rip the Band-Aid off and get it done. So we're moving forward until we're told differently. I mean, we're looking at it on the long-term range, just like we are the 2030 changes. 2030 changes, that's going to affect the city overall. I mean, there's a lot of things that are on the horizon for Riverdale. If we don't make choices now, it's going to be a lot worse and a lot more impactful down the road. So that's where we're at. Rich, I don't know, where is Rich? Do you want to add anything on that, or? And
if you do, Rich, you would need to come to the microphone if you're going to add anything.
Can I ask a question?
It's up to the chair.
Yeah, no. I'm fine.
I don't have a problem meeting with them afterwards another time and talking about these kind of things. I mean, this setting may not be the right one. And we don't have a problem doing that. We're not trying to pick on anybody. We're just trying to survive a program, keep it alive.
A question from the board, board member Arnold.
So just so you know, the process by law is we're under an agenda in a meeting. So that's why you can't talk again or ask questions from but I don't.
Mine doesn't have to do with the rent, it's something else.
Yeah, it just the way the agenda works with the law.
Talk to Carol, she can get you in touch with me, so.
Well, and I don't want to seem like I'm hiding behind Steve. So one of the things that we were talking about or that I said in the previous meeting was about the cuts. The funding that the city is under, especially in 2030, because we lose a percentage of the sales tax, if you're familiar with that. I mean, that's just income versus outgo. So we have to look at that. The senior center is going down. I mean, it's I can't go into a lot of that, but it's going down.
We can see that.
Right. I mean, if you'd like to talk afterwards, so another thing by law is like we can't adjourn the meeting and then all of us sit and talk about it because we have a quorum of 3 or more. So we can't do that. So, I mean, I would be willing to leave tonight so you can talk to others if they'd like to stay. And then if there's a time to come over to the senior center tomorrow night or something like that, and because 2 of us could come over, but 3 of us cannot. So if you have time, tomorrow, I'd be willing to come over. But the thing is, the harsh reality of the senior center is it's going down in the city-sponsored world because it was put in, it was a great program, and then it got forgotten about. And then bringing Steve in as the city administrator, he's gone through everything. Like, I mean, pretty much every budgetary item, right? I mean, as you go through with Cody. So to be able to understand where you truly are, I mean, one of the things when we had the mudslide, the landslide, I went up and knocked on every door up there, and it was dangerous. Like, people were ready to pull out weapons. I mean, it was ugly to go knock on doors up there. But the city was saying, we are not going to step in and help with the landslide because it's private property. People kept waiting for the city to come in and be their, white knight or their savior, and it wasn't going to happen. And that's the true reality. So you pick a time tomorrow night. I'll be there. If one other person wants to be there with me, I'll be at the senior center to talk about it, but some things we just can't say in a meeting setting. And as one person there being tomorrow night, if I'm there tomorrow night, or 2 of us tomorrow night, you cannot, we cannot make decisions. We're not going to speak for the council. We'll be speaking for ourselves individually of where we sit as a member of 5, one member of 5. So, and we're just under restrictions tonight because of the way the state runs our meeting, stuff.
Counselor Stevens, or Board Member Stevens.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question? Barbara Anderson? Yes. Just, you mentioned affordable housing waiting list. What affordable housing are you referring to, please?
Well, different apartments, they use the standard. A lot of the apartments set aside.
Okay, you're talking Section 8 subsidized housing.
Section 8, no, they have where, I don't know what the section it is, but it's where if your income is a certain amount, you only pay 30% of that. Right?
That's Section 8.
Is that Section 8?
That's Section 8. Okay. Thank you. Because my wife and I had an opportunity. We spent 4 years in the inner city of Ogden. We were working in an ecclesiastical, with the ecclesiastical authority of a particular ward, and there was a lot of significant challenges. And my wife and I got very personally involved in knowing many, if not all, of the services provided through Weaver Human Services, to include housing for senior care, for for mental illness, for addictions, for you name it. We got involved. And so after 4 years, we came back, and the Leslie trailer court was on shutting down, and so I helped in there. And I have not a lot, but I have helped place numerous individuals into Section 8 housing. And I've been there, seniors, families, whatever. And, you know, you have to have certain criteria to get in there so you could pay a third. Because there are places that are strictly for seniors, and some of them are nicer than others, I granted. But when the Leslie was shutting down, you know, there was some really sad situations there of single mothers. There's a lot of situations where of mental illness, addictions, or both. You know, there's a situation where somebody was evicted last winter, spent the winter in a little trailer and trying to repair. He couldn't get into Section 8 because he didn't have credit because he'd been evicted. And now he just got that cleared up with some help, and now is qualified and is getting into Section 8 housing. Now, will that work for everybody? Is that the answer? Maybe in some cases, yeah. And so we're not Section 8 housing. We can't be, because there's some things about it. And so in a way we're competing with that. And our rates have been in many ways compatible with Section 8 senior affordable housing in some cases, and because there's a lot of variables there. But you know, this is just a very hard subject because of we get it. It was a good idea. It was with the whole. I mean, I went and visited there. I think COVID really knocked it on its heels with all the activities, because it was not just the people who lived there. It was a place to socialize, to go to for the lunch, for the activities. That was really good. I don't think it's recovered from COVID personally, though. And I'm talking about the senior, not the housing part, but the senior part, which I thought was, man, this is great. But it's, and then the funding issues, inflation, the HUD rate that we're using is the benchmark that is probably more conservative than if you did surveys and whatnot, which are done, that of a comparable market for rentals of comparable size, HUD is actually less. But because of the inflation, and it's costing the city more to do things and on and on, I know it puts I mean, I have a retirement check, and I saw my little retirement check take a nice little increase with inflation here last January or whatever. And so it's like, I get it. So it's kind of a hard tightrope between what can be done and what to make this fiscally feasible. Anyway, I'd be happy to talk afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. Is there someone else with a comment? Board Member Hanson.
I think that's on. This is a really difficult situation, and we know that it is for you also. The hard part, we've had a lot of discussions about the senior center and how to approach it. We all recognize there's been a failure by staff over the last 10 or so years to keep up with the rental rates, to have the proper business management of the senior center. Some of those staff aren't here anymore that dropped the ball on that, but that doesn't solve anything for any of us today, where we have to make these decisions, or where now you're being impacted by it. But we have to make these difficult decisions. I do think it's fair and transparency, and because we've discussed it in public meetings, that the council has discussed getting rid of the housing entirely at the senior center. And it hasn't been voted on by the council. There's been no decisions made, but that's still in the mix. We've discussed a lot of different options with the housing at the senior center and with the building itself, with the programs, all in public meetings that you can go back and listen to. But I think it's fair for you to know that that's one of the things that has been discussed and will likely be discussed in the future. And so although there's this rental increase now, you know, there aren't decisions made yet as to the future of the senior center housing. But I think that's important for you to have that information as you move forward with your decisions at this point. That's all I had to say.
Any other comments? Okay. Well, this was a good discussion. It sounds like we do have some board members that are willing to meet with the residents and certainly listen to their concerns and try to help explain, you know, what's going on and why. And so our emails are out there, our contact information, so you're welcome to reach out. It sounds like Councilor Arnold or Board Member Arnold, you'll be there tomorrow night. Mr. Hilton,
We come up with a time that works for you guys.
would you like them to stop by tomorrow night? Yeah? Okay. What time?
You want to do it after lunch? Like
After lunch tomorrow?
Yeah, we could do it at lunch.
1 o'clock or?
1 o'clock tomorrow?
Go ahead and enjoy the lunch with them.
Yeah, we can go enjoy lunch with you.
I don't know. What's on the menu?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
How
They
is
know.
it?
I'm there.
They know. Spaghetti. Okay.
I'll be there at lunch and
And then we can meet afterwards.
I know.
We need to put your name down though, because you have to have reservations.
Oh.
Hey, Rich.
Gotta pay. We'd be happy
You
to
take
pay.
care of that for me.
Yeah, it just $4. Oh gosh, it's $4 now. I don't know.
Not till the new budget.
$3.50, not till the new
Oh,
budget.
it's the new budget.
July
Okay.
1st.
We're only $3.50.
Okay, I feel better.
Okay. Till July 1st.
Till tomorrow, you gotta raise it till
No, that's
No,
that's 10 days from now. So, okay. We'll move on to item number 2. Public hearing. Public hearing to receive and consider comments regarding adoption of the final Riverdale RDA budget for the fiscal year 2023. We don't need to do that one, but we are going to do the public hearing for the final Riverdale RDA budget for 23-24, right? That's what our public hearing is for. Okay. Any questions about that? Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Okay, the public hearing is now open. This is an opportunity to address the RDA board about the budget that's upcoming. Okay, seeing no public comment, we would need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. The public hearing is now closed. We will now move on to consideration of Resolution R 2023-02, adopting the final Riverdale RDA budget for 2023 and 2024. Mr. Cardin.
So as we talked in the earlier meeting, we haven't made any changes to the budget since our budget workshop in May, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor?
Board Member Hanson.
I just wanted to share just some information I learned today when I was reviewing the budget. There's $100,000 roughly that's transferred from the RDA Senior Center to the general fund as part of the budget.
There's like 60 grand.
Yeah. I know a portion of that's probably, well, that wouldn't be for general fund. The water's probably paid separately, I assume.
That is entirely for city services that are provided. Like, so for Sean's guys that mow the lawn, for me that does the accounting, for the IT, I had to go in there yesterday. We had a door problem. That is for Rich's time. That's for all those. And I went
Flat rate.
yeah, and I went through that a few years ago and came up with it, and like we're undercharging what we could be, but that's what that is.
When I was talking with someone about it, they mentioned that originally when the senior center opened, they transferred money to the general fund to actually subsidize the general fund. That was probably when we were receiving RDA increments, I imagine. And so I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't some lost information. And it sounds like there's been an adjustment to it. In looking at some of those things, though, the question that I had was that most of the building maintenance for the rec center, for this building, for all the buildings, would be paid out of the general fund, but it seems like that portion's being covered by the RDA rather than the general fund.
Well, you got to remember the RDA is a separate legal entity,
Right.
and so the city really shouldn't be covering those costs, right? And if you guys would like, we could actually go out to bid and we could do that entirely outsourced, but it would be much more expensive.
Okay.
Like we could have somebody come in and mow the lawn, we could have somebody come in and plow the parking lot, we could have somebody do all the repairs and all that stuff, but it's going to be much more expensive. Sean would love it.
No.
Charlie would love it because they plow the parking lot
from this meeting.
So, but that's what that is. I mean, it might have historically been that from as long as I've worked here, and from talking to Lynn, my predecessor, like it was always looked at for those services that are provided.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think my issue with it is that a portion of that is more that we're providing a service to the residents by having a building that they have an ownership in, that they have the right to use, and traditionally in every other building that comes from the general fund, where that percentage of the housing, to me, it seems more appropriate that that would be paid from the RDA and from the endowment fund when it needs repairs. I just wanted to share that, but I appreciate that you looked into it. Thanks.
And yeah, and it's just hard. We've had this discussion, I think, with you. I have this discussion internally. It's because of how that building was set up. It was never set up, I'm going to say, like it should have been, because it's this weird quasi in between, and it's really hard because, like, how do we charge like the power for the senior center portion versus like the public area for the? It's just really hard to differentiate. And so ultimately the easiest way would probably be if you shut everything down and then only did stuff there and figured out what the true costs were and stuff, but that's not really practical either.
But it's a choice we make.
Right.
That's all.
Right. And so we could come up with a replacement funding as well if, it's up to you guys.
I did have a comment that was brought to me by one of the numerous residents that reached out to me about this, and I don't know if there's a reason we don't do it, if it's because the RDA owns it, but they said that when the building was originally built, there had been a consideration that it might be able to be rented out for things like weddings or family parties or that sort of thing. And I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but just from the high level view, it does seem like kind of a nice facility.
I can tell you a little bit. We did start out that way, and we were renting it out. And then we had a number of, I think it was primarily quinceaneras and some other things that took place there. And it started to get to the point where it was causing us so much damage that Larry just felt that we're going to ruin the facility, so he shut it down.
Really?
Yeah. It was damages and thefts for different little things, but we wanted to preserve that. And we ended up going the other route to preserve it because it was really getting beat up.
That's unfortunate because it is a nice facility, and
Yeah.
wedding venues are very, very expensive to rent. And,
Well, and, there may be things we could do and look at that again and just require big, down payments and stuff like that. But I think at the time it was brand new and it was really getting destroyed, and they just said, no, we're not doing this anymore. That's how that happened. So
okay, just a thought. It might be a way to.
One other thing that came up on that was the residents themselves was concerned with all the people coming into their home area.
Yeah, and I did.
It caused a big, just from what I remember, it was a big deal with the residents when we bring in these large groups because there's no really separation.
That's it right there. There was the sound, the people would go down the halls kind of exploring the building.
Yeah.
And even
that's all stuff I've kind of run through my mind. Like there isn't much of a separation, so it could be a problem.
And even staffing, because like at Rich's building, like he has somebody there kind of to take care of the facility while people are renting it out, and we don't have anybody like that at that facility. So I think that was part of the problem too.
Yeah. Okay. I've had a lot of different people suggest a lot of things. They suggested a scout troop go in and do maintenance and help the residents with their stuff that Chris Stone used to do. They also said maybe the military academy could maintain the grounds. Anyway, I've heard from a lot of different people. Those are all from different people. So anyway, yeah. But I know Mr. Douglas has a place in his heart, so I don't want to take that from him. So, Board Member Hanson.
There's no more comments. I would make the motion to adopt the final Riverdale RDA budget as stated in the packet.
Okay, that's Resolution R 2023-02. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the board members?
Mrs. Merrill?
Yes.
Ms. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Very good. That passes unanimously. We have a budget for next year for the RDA. That's good. Number 4, approval of purchase of new rooftop unit for the Riverdale Senior Center in the amount not to exceed $36,895 from Dick Kearsley Service Center. Mr. Brooks?
Yeah, I'll take that one. This is just, as I mentioned in a pre-planning meeting, this is just above my spending authority. Unless you tell me otherwise, I can sign that. This originally, when this happened, this broke down last summer. We were a little bit nervous about it because I think the first quotes we got were over 50,000, weren't they, Sean? They were quite high, so we were having heart attacks over this. But fortunately, they were able to get some parts in, and I think they did a partial fix on it. And it's, as far as I know, up and going. We're ready to go. We just got to pay it.
This is actually a whole new unit.
Is it? So we came out a lot better.
We didn't have air conditioning on it, but now the unit's replaced.
And this goes back to what we've been saying. You keep getting hits like this. These aren't cheap. I mean, that's a nice facility. There's no question. But it's also expensive. You know, we had a dishwasher or something. What'd you have go out, Rich, last year to the tune? I think that started off at 10. He got it down lower than that. But it's expensive. And here we're sitting at almost a 20-year-old building. And all these repairs and stuff that we've been doing for the move-outs, that's just been basic stuff. You're only talking paint and flooring and just basic stuff like that. We haven't replaced anything else as far as fixtures and utilities and stuff like that. And 20 years old, we're going to start seeing this more and more and more and more. So,
There's 11 or 12 more of these units. Some of them are bigger than this.
yeah, and they're not cheap. So,
And that doesn't cover the senior side. That's just the senior center end.
Oh,
The
senior
apartments.
center side.
I'm sorry, it doesn't cover the housing side? This is just the front side?
The housing side has individual units.
Oh,
So when you start doing that, you're gonna have one in each unit that you have to do.
Oh, yeah.
and that's going to start happening. At 20 years, they're not going to go a whole lot longer. And we haven't replaced them because we're trying to be as conservative as we can. But
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the approval of that purchase? Seeing none, Board Member Arnold?
Move to approve the purchase of the new rooftop unit at the Riverdale Senior Center in the amount not to exceed $36,895.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion on that? Ms. Maragoni, will you please pull the board?
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
yes.
Mr. Hilton?
Yep.
Ms. Hanson?
Yes.
Ms. Merrill?
Okay, that passes unanimously. Now, item number 5, consideration to adjourn into a closed executive session to discuss the purchase or sale of real estate. Mr. Brooks, we want to have a discussion about some real estate.
Right.
Possible.
yeah,
Okay. We would need a motion to go into that closed. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the board?
Was that motion second or?
It was motion.
Motion second, yeah.
Hold on one second. Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Hilton?
Yep.
Ms. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Ms. Merrill?
Yes.
Okay, we are going into closed session to have a discussion about the sale of real estate.
Mayor, I would ask that Mr. D. Hanson remain in here because this somewhat it applies to him. He's got some information that I think is valuable to the board. So
I'll allow it.
I don't know. You're in disguise.
He is in disguise, isn't he?
Recognize you.
I'm like, did you get like stranded on a
It
desert
looks
island?
like Castaway, doesn't it?
It had a gym in it.
I was